Welcome back. Today we are going to do a very quick talk on unique melodies MEXT. So we're going to do this one kind of quickly for a couple reasons. One, this is a loaner set by a very generous guy named John. Thank you, John, for the loaner of MEXT and the other sets. So I do want to get these back to him in a reasonable amount of time. And two, at the same time, other people have been sending sets, other brands have sent sets. So I do have some other sets that have arrived since I've started listening to these. So I want to get to those in a reasonable amount of time as well, so these new sets don't turn into the old sets. So this is what it looks like up close. MEXT is a bone conduction driver. So there's one bone conduction driver, there is 4 balanced armatures, and there is 1 dynamic driver. So again, kind of a tribrid. This is something that Unique Melody has done more than a few times. And I've only listened to MEST and MEXT, and that is yet another reason why we're going to go through this one kind of quickly, because I'm not familiar with the whole line. So I sort of have a snapshot in time of MEST, which was a legendary set, and then what they called MEXT, which came later, a little bit cheaper, a little bit different configuration. But I've only heard these two, but I would summarize them. MEXT was very much a wow set. You put it on, and the staging, the treble, the detail, the extension, it was very much a wow experience. MEXT, it has a little bit of that DNA to it, but more like a high quality everyday carry kind of set that you would listen to. Not exactly the wow experience that I had with MEXT. This one is more of, wow, this is a very, very nice polished set, pulled back quite a bit from MEXT and kind of refined in that way. The graph doesn't make much sense. It didn't really make too much sense on MEXT, and it doesn't really come close to capturing how it sounds due to how the bone conduction fills in the response. And you can kind of look at the two side by side, and they're very similar. And perhaps you could point to this and say, oh, MEXT in the green does have more treble, but you have like no idea of what MEXT actually sounds like just by looking at the graph. MEXT is a very, very unique. The way it did treble and rendered that is very, very unique, and actually much farther away from what it appears on the graph. So not too much to glean from this, but it's cool to look at anyway. And I will say also the second little bit that was actually harder to do on MEXT was to isolate the bone conduction part that was filled in on MEXT was actually really hard to do. And I actually tried quite a bit trying to do it. It's much easier to hear on MEXT. So on MEXT, and you can actually hear it just without even doing too much. So Rolling Stones, Ruby Tuesday, it tends to shake the bone conduction. So you hear the dynamic driver, and then you hear something else going on at the same time. Something that was a little harder to hear on the original MEXT, the way they did the bone conduction. This one on MEXT is a little easier to really hear where it's actually filling in, and if you pull it out of your ear a little bit, you start to hear it as well. So yeah, I tried all those things with MEXT and wasn't really able to really hear, isolate the bone conduction bit to it, whereas MEXT it's much easier, probably a different driver and a different implementation. So that being said, this is a $1,000-ish set. Is it really worth it? And I would say both of them are actually worth it. I think they're both great sets, but I think some people are always going to be willing to pay $1,000 for Unique Melody sets because they are unique. I mean, there's no one else who has a better name than Unique Melody for what they do. I think lots of sets do hybrids, they do tribrids. They tend to, if you just do balanced armature dynamic drivers, they tend to sound a little bit similar. Certainly you can get people to say, well, I tried a Unique Melody set next to a high count balanced armature dynamic driver traditional set. Perhaps they like that one better, but it'd be really hard to say that Unique Melody doesn't do things that are unique. And some people are always going to pay for that uniqueness. And for people who have everything, who have all the hybrids, they'll gravitate to these kinds of sets because, yeah, they are unique. This one does do bone conduction. And Unique Melody is really good at picking drivers and tuning and refining, and I think they did a really good job on this one as well. So MEXT had a very crazy stage. It had a very immersive. It was unlike other sets. Other sets do projection and immersion, and MEXT was a little bit different. It was kind of shocking how different it was from other sets at the time. And so did they ruin that with MEXT? And I would say no. It's not the same stage as MEXT. It's not that unexpected, I think, is what I would have called MEXT. I think the stage, you sort of expected that it was going to be 3D and immersive, but where instruments actually appeared and the imaging was actually different than other sets. MEXT is much closer to what you're expecting from other sets. If you listen to other sets that do really nice staging, it sounds very similar on MEXT, and it sounds very closer to other high-end sets. Everything is projected around your head, and it's going to be very similar to other sets, and just a little bit better because they have some nice, clear black backgrounds. The way they tune and do treble is slightly different. The bone conduction makes it a little slightly different. So things are a little bit, has kind of more of a laser sharp imaging to it, but the stage wise, where things are and around your head, I think is actually more similar to other sets, whereas MEXT was a very different experience. So are there any things wrong with it? I do think the nozzle is a little big, and I'm usually pretty tolerant on the nozzles, but I don't know why this one sort of bugged me. Maybe it was just the tip I was using, and if you just look at it, it doesn't look all that big, and maybe it's flared out a little bit too, but yeah, kind of a game of millimeters, right? Get half a millimeter in the wrong spot, and it just adds a little bit of pressure to your ear canal, and you start to notice it more, and that's what actually happened on this one. I've certainly listened to plenty of sets with thicker nozzles that didn't bother me, and this one sort of, I started to feel it after a while. But I wouldn't say it was painful or anything. I would just say it just sort of, it's more of a noticeable thing that you feel after a while. And I think, again, each step away from MEXT was this wow set, and I think each step that they took sounding more like other sets, perhaps that sounds a little bit less unique. Did they lose some of their uniqueness? I think that treble detail and extension was very, very unique on MEXT, and for MEXT to kind of pull it all back into a very kind of more common everyday carry kind of style, I think that lost a little bit of its uniqueness. I mean, you still have the bone conduction, that is still very unique, but it's not quite the unique experience of MEXT, but it's kind of unique and better in certain ways. So some of the sets that John had actually sent me that we've talked about before. So the Aureolus Shazlahi, Neon 4, and then MEXT and Isabella. So I would say that Shazlahi and Neon 4 were actually very similar. They're both bassy fun sets, but I really had to match tracks to their signatures. And when it hits really well. And I think especially the Aureolus sets, I think those do really, really well when you actually pair the right music to that signature response. I think that they are amazing sets, and Shazlahi had the planar, and that was a little bit extra special. Neon 4 has this sort of tactile bass kind of thing going on, so big bass response, very good electronic dance music. I think electronics in general was actually really, really good on Neon 4. But I think vocals on Shazlahi were actually pretty good. Vocals on Neon 4 I wasn't really a fan of. And then you get to Isabella and MEXT, and I think these are more of a play anything in your library. You'll keep skipping tracks to hear how they play back on these sets as opposed to skipping tracks to find the one that sounds good. I think everything sounds good on MEXT. Everything sounded great on Isabella. And those are the kind of thing, and that's why I said this is really much an everyday carry. You just put your phone in your pocket, hit play. There is no need to skip any tracks because they are going to play back very, very nicely on those two sets, and kind of why I really appreciate MEXT. And I do appreciate some of the things that MEXT did, and I think the treble on MEXT was actually fun. It got fatiguing after a while, but as far as a set that I could listen to for the next 3 weeks, I would have no problem listening to MEXT every day, all day. It's really, really nice. But MEXT is one I would pick for that simple reason. It's very high quality playback, plays my library very well. It doesn't care if it's 70s rock or 2000s EDM. It does them all very, very well. And most mid-fi sets kind of shoot for its tuning consistency. And I think that's where MEXT was a little bit different. It had that huge treble bit to it. This is much more of an end-to-end refined, pulled back, conservative. I'm going to play back, a very fine, refined version of music, and I think that's exactly what it does very well. Sound, I think the bass is the iffiest part, how it actually meshes with the bone conduction. I thought that was kind of iffy, and like I said, Ruby Tuesday, you kind of notice that there's something going on there. But, just using a dynamic driver and a balanced armature with the bone conduction to fill in, it gives you a more familiar, coherent hybrid sound. Again, it's pulled back, so everything's in place, and it sounds kind of like one driver. Maybe not the insane detail of MEXT, but very much closer to a very fine 1+4 style hybrid sound is what I would call it. So that is what I got on MEXT. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.